that's our little bit of discussion is we're talking wasting your time, talking crap, whatever kind of ridiculous slang you want.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Everyone, welcome to Real Siblings. It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast that just ain't typical. I'm Donna, and he's Eric, and we are the Real Siblings. And yes, Eric is here today. Yay! For the last couple, if you've watched any of them in January, you know that Eric's been out sick. To be honest, you've only been able to watch him because I don't think he's had the time to even get them yet, where you can just listen on Spotify or Google or any of the other places. Anyway, we are both professional realtors with Keller Williams. I don't know that there's any other reference we need to do today except that, what are you pointing at?
Someone started to barge in the production studio.
AKA office. For me, home living room. I love it. I love it. We do try to blend lifestyle, example, I just did, with real estate as we work to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners. While the topics vary and our conversations go in a lot of directions, we work to provide our listeners with insights into the industry, better equipping you for your next real estate transaction. So, Eric, welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'd say it's good to be back, but then you hear that bit of a scratchy throat. I don't know. I'm claiming 98% today.
98's getting there.
And to be really, really specific, with as bad as my right lung got during this entire process.
Yep.
So for those of you, I know Donna mentioned sick. I progressed from what I thought was an allergic reaction to one of my main allergens, which is mountain cedar here in Texas, to diagnosis with the flu 2 days later, to diagnosis with pneumonia 3 days after that, to being hospitalized the next day, and then being told the pneumonia was necrotizing MRSA pneumonia. Part of that process in your lungs, going back to your high school anatomy or whatever, your lungs, the area where the oxygen actually exchanges in your blood to become oxygenated blood cells to take to the rest of your body, that area in your lung is called the alveoli. And mine collapsed in certain areas of my lung. It's called atelactis. And atelactis.
There's not going to be a quiz, right?
There's not going to be a quiz. I know you're always worried about, I'm going to give you a quiz on something. Point is, those alveoli are not entirely healed yet. And that causes me, specifically right now, if you go to sneeze and you think of the action you have when you're sneezing and all of a sudden you take that really deep breath, I can feel the pain on the right side of my lung because those alveoli are still not where they're supposed to be.
Wow.
So there you go. And you know what? Most of that I didn't even have to look up because I remembered alveoli, being a science guy in biology and physiology and all the rest of those things that I took in my college days.
All I know is that I dropped science in 10th grade.
There you go.
Maybe 11th. I think I took some chemistry.
See, I dropped math my senior year. It was like, I'm done with trig. I don't get it. I don't like it. I'm done.
Yeah. Was Mr. Schiefer still there?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So he still has one of my most favorite quotes, and it's like, a poor excuse is better than none, but not much.
I didn't know that. I'll have to tell his daughter, Ann. She's a friend of mine. I like that. So today, Eric, last time I had a guest, Dustin Runyon, on who, and it was a little bit about overcoming challenges and just moving forward in 2025. And I had met Dustin at Better Up, an event here in the Phoenix area with our broker and owner. And then prior to that, I had Who did I have on? I had another guest.
Prior to that, your sons?
Oh my God.
I
I did. I had my sons on. Okay, I am older than him. I know it doesn't look that way, but I forget things. Yeah, Caleb and Adam. Oh my gosh, that's funny. So today we're gonna delve deeper. How's that for a lead into?
Ooh.
Delve deeper because Eric lives in rural America. I live in town.
I live in remote America.
Yes, remote. I have city water and city sewer. Eric does not. So what are we going to talk about today, little brother?
I thought it was very, very important as we move ahead and we continue to talk. Through the course of all the seasons, we've kind of talked different aspects of the house, physical aspects, personal aspects, what's cosmetic, what's in the... But there comes a point where if you're going to live like I have chosen to live, in order to do that, you have to have what's known as an on-site sewer system, OSS, or what is commonly referred to as a septic. You got to have some place for whatever you wash down the shower, whatever you drain the laundry machines, or flush down your toilets to go. And it's a process.
Yeah.
The process now, from where I was at, it's been 20 plus years. Our system, which I did for about $12,000, holes, tanks, fully installation, engineered, and everything else, probably would be closer to $40,000.
So you did that because you just bought the piece of land and then you brought your house there. So
Yes.
You had to do everything up there. So you had to do the well and the septic.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
And in this case, as I say, we're talking crap today. We're going to talk water systems next episode is what I had planned. And of course, there was a production schedule.
They kind of go together. So
yeah, right. So you got to have water in to get water out.
Correct.
But with where I live, there's certain requirements, and every county, every municipality, township, wherever you at, may have different guidelines.
Right.
But because I had to put in a well too, not having a water system, your septic system and your well had to be a certain distance from each other, because basically water's going back into the ground.
Right.
And where do we get our well water from? The ground. So in order to make sure or help protect the water you're bringing out of the ground, there has to be a certain distance between them. In our case, that's 100 feet, as long as the well shaft is what they refer to as pressure sealed. And that means there is actually a cemented tube on the outside of the well shaft. It's not just an open hole that goes down to the bottom where you have a pump.
Yep.
There is 700 feet of 7-inch diameter pipe from the surface all the way down to where I extract the water.
All right. So I told Eric today, I'm going to let him talk, but I'm going to throw in my question since I know nothing about this. So over the years that you've lived there, I know you've had to redo some things. And to be honest, at this point, I'm not sure if it's the well or the septic or both that you do. Both. Okay. And part of that has been related to rust and iron, right?
And in how dirty our water is.
Okay.
For lack of better terminology, we have our portion of the aquifer. We are solid limestone.
Yep.
And limestone, as water percolates through the limestone, picks up a lot of minerals. And ours is not mildly hard, not moderately hard. It is intensely hard. The first time we had it tested, you test that by dropping droplets of water into a sample. And when the color changes, you've got an idea of how hard your water is. We ran out of room in the test tube to put additional drops of water in order to get the color to change. So at that point, San Antonio water is typically what they will call 8 to 12 parts per million on a hardness level. We were somewhere over 140, we figure. And San Antonio was considered to have hard water.
Wow.
So with all of those minerals coming in, yes, we treat it coming in, but that also causes us potential issues going out. And there are multiple systems. Historically, you had a tank that had a gravity feed tube from your house to which water, waste, whatever flowed. The hards, the solids, settled to the bottom. The water flowed out.
Right.
From there, that water, once it got to a certain height, would just percolate through leach lines or into a leach field.
Right.
And those leach lines just were porous holes, similar to what farmers in Ohio tile their fields with. You put a pipe down at the bottom, it has some holes, the water flows into it, it helps get the water out of the ground faster so it doesn't stay too wet, since we lived and grew up in an area that was originally the Black Swamp.
Right. Right.
Same thing on those septic pipes. Depending on how much land you had, those lines just went out. And hopefully you avoided some roots. But guess what? Septic lines don't have to be identified on a survey.
What do you mean? You don't have to know which way they go? Is that what you mean?
You don't have to know which way they go. When you do a survey, at least in Texas, and it's showing improvements, those improvements are the permanent improvements. A septic tank and lines that can be easily replaced and moved and relocated are not considered permanent. So they do not show on a survey.
All right. So only one home that I sold kind of on the west side of Interstate 10 beyond the university had a septic in a subdivision, but not an HOA subdivision. And when they bought versus when they sold, they had to go from a traditional septic system with a leach field to one of the newer ones, which was
an aerobic.
So much more money.
An AERO, an aerobic system. So instead of a tank and lines, it is now, 2025, we're now to where they kind of make a 2-tank system.
Okay.
When I installed 23 years ago, it was a 3-tank system.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a 2-tank with one of the tanks having 2 chambers. So the point is you have an initial tank to where everything from the house goes into.
Okay.
So if you choose to have a garbage disposal, we don't, never have, toilets, laundry, showers, everything else down the tube and into that first tank. Solid settled to the bottom, water goes into secondary tank. The secondary tank has an aerator, aerobic system, which feeds oxygen into that, which helps the bacteria, think probiotics in your stomach, break it down and make it better, cleaner. Into third tank. Third tank has yet another filtration system. The third tank has a pump system into it that then says, okay, we've got enough water. Pump comes on and it pumps that water someplace onto the property from a distribution standpoint. Technically, at this point, that water, you can drink it. Nobody in their right mind is going to go, hey, 15 foot away is a tank of, let's have a drink.
Like when I drank out of the creek where the cows were.
In our case, the lid is loose enough that it's always got mosquitoes in it. So you've always got live insect larvae and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
That then has to get pumped somewhere. In my case, because we have so much rock, we had to build a field that had enough soil for the water to percolate into to help filter out. So here I am on 6.6 acres when we first built, and I had to bring semi-truckloads of dirt, 27 plus yards of dirt in, build a concrete retaining wall to hold the dirt in place so it doesn't just wash downhill, and then bury subsurface drip lines.
So next time I'm at your house, you need to show me where this stuff
is. Show you where this is at, right?
Yeah. Because I didn't know you had to bring in all the dirt.
And like everything, it's got a filter on it. The filter gets clogged, even though it's supposedly all of this clean. So guess what? You have to clean the filter. How do you clean the filter? You have one, you take it out. You exchange it with another one, either brand new or one that you've been cleaning, soaking it in baking soda, changing out the baking soda so that, and you think, here's 3-tank system. You have room for 2,000 gallons of fluid, solids, whatever. And it all comes down to a microfiber filter that in this case is about 6 inches long. And if the screen gets clogged up, the entire system doesn't work.
All right. So brother, I have to ask you a couple. I just have to ask you a couple questions. So for our listeners, all 3 of my brothers have lived rurally. Dan, most recently, in the last however many years ago they moved, 5 years, 6 years, I don't remember how many. They moved from the house they had lived in town in Manhattan for 27 or 28 years out to a big house on the side of a hill near a lake. So they, I believe, are now septic, right? I think where they are.
Yes.
Yeah. And Ken, who's now back in town outside of Chicago, he was at the top of a hill in a roundhouse in Virginia. So I'm the only one that has not chosen this world. When you and Jeannie were first looking at that land, looking to buy up there, did you have any idea of the work involved in doing this?
I did, only because we knew we were going.
Okay.
Had I done enough work to have a good estimate on how much it was going to cost to do these things? No.
Okay. And do you mean initially or over time do these things? Or
initially, we knew in order to occupy the house, we had to have water, we had to have a sewer system, in addition to electrical power to the house and the house itself.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, I ended up being my own general contractor.
Okay.
I'm the one who found and located our electricians, our company to do the install on the septic, and the company to do our well.
Okay.
I paid them directly for the work, for the service, for what they were doing.
Right.
I had known that honestly, before it was a requirement, I thought the aerobic system was a better way to go, just because of how our land was and how many roots and everything else.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that happens with a traditional leach line, and why I pointed out a few minutes ago, it doesn't have to show on the survey. Guess what? If you've transferred 3 or 4 times and people don't really know where their septic system is, they start planting trees. They start planting shrubs. And as we discussed, that leach line system on traditional was a clay pipe that had some holes in it. Well, guess what? As a new plant is sending out its little root feelers, guess where they're going? Going, hey, there's a source of nutrient-rich
all sorts of
water
fertilizer in there.
And then once it continues to grow, those actually get longer and send runners into the tank, which is why we don't have a disposal system. Because if you think of the normal stuff you put down a disposal, if you're cutting peppers or tomatoes and you get those seeds in there,
it could grow.
Guess what? Those seeds go into a tank, and a diligent seed is going to go, hey, this is pretty good. And there's enough oxygen, because every one of these tanks has to have a lid. Yeah. And even though the lid is there, that lid has some sort of gap. It doesn't seal 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's some amount of light. There's some amount of oxygen outside of the water system, and they'll grow. Same thing on those roots. So part of our inspection system, and I think I've mentioned this in before when we've talked home inspections, if you're going to go remote, and you're going to do an inspection in Texas, it is not a requirement for the seller to clean the septic tank.
Wow.
And in order to do a thorough inspection to find out if the tank is damaged, broken, or operating correctly, you need to empty it. Every single time we turn around, EPA, state regulations are saying, you have to pay this. There's fees related to that. So not only are you bringing a truck, what Dad would have called the honey wagon, out to empty the tanks, you pay a per gallon price. They measure what's going out, and then they have to take it to wherever the closest approved EPA disposal site is for taking this waste, this contaminated waste.
Okay, Eric. So in Arizona, the seller has to certify their septic within 6 months of the close of escrow. And I've sold one where they didn't clean it for 35 years and it was still in perfect condition. It was a big piece of land, super far from the house. And I don't typically do rural, so it isn't like I do a ton of those. But thinking back, I want to go to Lindsey. Okay, so because you and I talked a little bit about it, so. The house, we had a pump outside the house on Lynn Street, the 18th.
Right. This is the 1868 brick Victorian that we've talked about. When we moved in 73, there was a hand pump that was outside that you could pump and still pump water out of a local well.
And we would use that. But we always had a water softener also. And I remember when I first had hard water, that the soft water, I always felt like I still had soap on me, right? So do you soften your water now or no?
Yes.
You do. Otherwise, would it
because when we didn't, and this is more leading into next episode.
Sorry.
When we did not, within 3 weeks, the shower heads were sealing up.
Because
the water was so hard and so much lime was coming through.
Got it. Okay.
Deposits, those dissolved minerals. So since you went to Lindsey, I told you I was doing a little bit before those back of house things.
Yeah.
I said, wait, I'm still doing a little bit of research. Give me a minute. So I had gone back because we did talk about it. Lindsey is not a big town. Never was a big town. Currently, 2010, I think it shows that it was 446 people.
Yeah.
And yes, I looked down because I actually have that on this report that I have printed a copy of.
Yep.
446 people. That's not even enough in the state of Texas to officially incorporate. Lindsey is the only incorporated town entity in Washington Township in Ohio. Hessville is unincorporated. So as an incorporated town, now in order to incorporate, it's not only based on population, it's based on population density and how many square miles. In order for something to incorporate in Ohio right now, you have to have 4 square miles of incorporated area. Lindsey is less than two square miles.
I was going to say, there's no way that we're 4. I don't know where the boundaries are. Like, is Seelheimer?
Right. But all of that, at some point, we've talked about the water tower. You have painted pictures of the water tower.
Yeah.
We climbed the water tower.
Right.
Never, ever in growing up did I think about the water tower and the water tower providing water to the house, and that Lindsey, for the size that it was, had a water system.
Yeah.
And the reason that I bring that up and the kind of tone to my voice is there is a very, very shishi suburb of San Antonio, which is now completely surrounded by San Antonio, because that's what happens to towns, small suburbs. They chose not to put in a sewer system. So majority of the houses in this very, very high-end community called Chavano are septic systems, and they're traditional septic systems. And they're not rural. They're completely surrounded.
Interesting.
I mean, they've got major highways, 6-lane roads, inner city stuff everywhere, yet everybody's on a septic system because they didn't put it in. And now the cost of putting a sewer system in,
not to mention tearing up all the roads
to get to those houses and having them tie in. So this report that I found, Washington Township, Lindsey, 2015. This is October of 2015. And this was proposed and reviewed on what they might need to do to upgrade the water system and the sewer system. Okay? So the sewer system in San Antonio, in Lindsey, wastewater treatment plant is designed. They use wastewater treatment as a numeric number based on MGD, which is millions of gallons a day.
Okay.
Lindsey population, 446. It's not going to be producing 1 million gallons a day, right?
No.
It's 0.215 or 215,000 gallons in a day that go through the little sewer system down next to the cemetery. And that processes and flows into where?
The fields.
Mud Creek.
I shouldn't laugh, but you know about me drinking out of the creek, right?
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But you were upstream from the sewer system, only where the cows and all the animals got into right?
I just told somebody about that yesterday, and they were like, you drank out of the creek? And I'm like, well, yeah.
Look, where Bob Roush Creek Bend Farm sits now, the 3 dams, there was areas where the water percolated underneath it. It's like, look how clear it is. I think everybody who went down there, if you was the winter, you broke off a piece of ice and you sucked on the ice.
You sucked on a piece of ice.
Right? So the sewer system, what they were looking at was a proposal, and if they had to make an upgrade. I got to get to the right page because there's a whole bunch of numbers on here. Okay. In 2015, the proposed upgrades that were going to be needed were estimated to be just under $1.6 million.
Divided by 400.
They built in a 10% contingency, and then they built in, after the contingency, 20% for legal, for engineering, for financing, for construction observation. $315,000. All totaled, the project in 2015 was estimated to be just over a $2 million project. And that's not running the sewer lines. That's just upgrading the system at the processing end.
Wow.
We hear the average annual inflation rate is 2.9%. We go, 2.9%. That's not bad.
But now you're going to take 2.9% times that.
Well, 2.9%, when you do 2.9% average and you do it every single year, that actually works out from 2015 to 2025, 33.16% increase. So that same project from 2015 would now be $2,728,000 just for upgrades at the sewer system. And we look back, it's like, how does Lindsey
afford that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 446, that's 286 people per square mile. And I think one of those episodes we talked about how many total houses. There's only like 121 houses in the incorporated area.
Yeah, and thinking about how many were in a family, an average family when we were kids versus,
what they are now. And it just, I had no appreciation, consideration for the fact that when Dad and Mom bought the 1868 house, that house was tied into a sewer system. We know because the gardening that Dad did, we found remnants of what we figured was the outhouse because of what was in the dirt in that area. Yeah. And at what point, that's what I say, I didn't get the historical number, did Lindsey go, you know what, we got to add a sewer system?
That was very forward thinking in a way. I mean, did you find out in your searching when they did that, or like right when Lindsey was when those 9 brothers were found in Lindsey?
That's what I say. No, I couldn't. I thought I was going to try to get a hold of Creek Bend Farm because I thought Creek Bend Farm might have, but it's Monday and they're not open today. So there was no staff there to call. I'd be leaving a message.
Well, since we're all going to be back there this summer, a lot of information, I think, is housed at the fire station and stuff. And I know that they bring things in then too. So,
well, that's one of the things from an incorporation standpoint. You mentioned fire department.
Yeah.
A municipality now has to be self-sufficient, meaning it has to be able to have its governing body, mayor, or how many council people that is.
Yeah.
Police and fire.
Yeah.
Who does the fire in Lindsey?
Volunteers.
Still volunteers. So you couldn't incorporate based on the fact that they are a volunteer because the 446 people in their 120 some properties would have to be able to fund and pay for
firemen,
a decent fire truck,
which they have. And so part of this is interesting to me, and I'm going to speak on behalf of our little town. Because I think that there's this idea sometimes, in Arizona, we have 4 or 5 bigger towns or cities, and then a lot of miles in between anything and everything, right? So I don't know about the little towns, but in Ohio, where we grew up, it was 5 or 6 miles to the next one, right? It wasn't 20 miles or 50 miles, or if you got off the highway, you couldn't find another town.
Right.
But also that you mentioned the soil, the black swamp was good land, is good farming. It was, and educated people. And so I think about in a way that, yes, we were in a small town, but isn't like we were backwoods country hicks. I mean, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does, at least to me. And maybe to some of our listeners, you weren't isolated.
Right.
So West Texas. Yeah. There's area of Arizona, you get to that.
And then you better get your water, you better get your gas because you don't have any idea how far you're going to go to get to the next one. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I just recently, from a real estate standpoint, I know we're running out of time. We're going to have to wrap this up. Had a rental out near Medina Lake. Now, Medina Lake.
Okay. Which way is that from you?
That is south and west.
Okay.
9 miles as the crow flies, straight line, aeronautic, whatever you want to call it. But to get to the house because of the roads, the twists, turns, and everything else takes me 35 minutes, and I live in the same zip code.
Oh, wow.
Advising some of the potential renters. It's like, look, your closest grocery store is this thing called the Hill Country Grocery Store, which is an entirely little independent. And just because of the one way in, one way out from where this rental is, that was going to take you 20 minutes to get to that as a grocery store. To get to a real substantive grocery store, you were on a 40-minute drive minimum, picking one direction or another one way.
What is it for you to get to a major grocery store?
I take to get
30?
to the one that I normally shop at 20 minutes.
Okay.
Now,
because to me it seems further, but
right.
Yeah.
This is further more remote. And it's like, look, this has to be something you're willing to accept.
Yeah.
So there's a distance. We've talked lifestyle before, and heck, we're a real estate and lifestyle podcast, aren't we? Yeah.
I literally had that phone call with someone this morning. He's a chemical guy, and he wants to create and do something. It's a little scary. He goes, don't think Breaking Bad. He goes, don't think that. He goes, but I want to live rurally, and I want to be able to do this, and I want to be able to sell it on eBay and on Etsy. And I was like, okay, whatever it was. I can't remember. But I said, I'm going to record with my brother. Yeah. And he said, but it's 26 miles for me. And I said, so what matters more? The distance or the miles, or the time or the miles? Because he goes, no, the miles. He goes, I don't care if it takes me 20 minutes or 50 minutes. I don't want as many miles on my car. So that was interesting because we changed the parameters of where he would live. Personally, I wouldn't live there, but we all live in different places. And that's what the lifestyle piece is about. Yeah.
Well, so that's our little bit of discussion is we're talking wasting your time, talking crap, whatever kind of ridiculous slang you want to wrap up with. And we want to thank everybody for listening, joining us today as we had this conversation. It was nice to have the conversation, sis.
Yes.
Sincerely. We appreciate y'all listening to hear me closing this episode. That is important. If you've made it this far, thanks for staying with us. It's important for us from a podcast standpoint because guess what? Algorithms change. And length of listening time is becoming more important to various platforms. So stay with us till the end. We've recalled about our life in Lindsey, having a little bit more respect for a little municipality than what we ever did while we were growing up.
Yep.
We've talked lifestyle. We've talked septic systems, and we're going to talk more wells on a future episode. Remember, our goal is to communicate, educate, entertain, and connect with you, our listeners. We're both realtors. Donna's in Arizona. I'm in Texas. We both work for Keller Williams. If you need assistance in those areas, reach out, get in contact with us. It's always at the bottom of every single one of our episodes. Additionally, if you need help around the world, we both are connected to a vast network. We can help connect you with someone to help you out in your area of the States or around the globe. Remember, maybe simple, ain't always easy. I'm Eric.
And I'm Donna.
And we are Real Siblings. Yay, brother. Thanks for listening, everybody. It's good to be back in 25.
Yay.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home.
Hi, I'm Annabelle, and I want to thank you for investing your valuable time in listening to Real Sibling. It Ain't Easy. I hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast with my Grandpa Eric and Aunt Grandma. Please take the time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes Grandpa put together with their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and website. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.